right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the news desk for our lunchtime entertainment, largely featuring this guy, Mr. Nate Price, the organised play community manager for Wizards of the Coast, and this guy, Mr. Randy Buehler, Hall of Famer, and of course part of our coverage team, but chiefly yourselves, because we're going to answer the question, so what now? Yesterday we had the first ever live real-world Vintage Masters draft, and we're going to go through not the first, but the second picks of every player at that table. We're going to show you the first pick, and then Randy's going to give you his best idea of what the players would have been thinking through the second pick. Then Nate's going to fire up. Where are we on, Nate? Are we on sort of cover it live chat? What's the chat window?
You reach the chat prompt by going to magic.wizards.com/2014 WC, the World Championship coverage page, and then on the main coverage page, just a little bit down from where it starts off, there's a big box that says Cover It Live. You can type your answers in there and join in on the conversation.
Okay, and so we're just going to get to vote on what we think the best pick 2 is going to be. You'll pick this up as we go along, so get yourself into Cover It Live and join us as we answer, so what now? We are going to begin, let's take a look at our table graphic. There you see it's up on the screen, and we are going to begin with Sean McLaren. There you see him up at the top, the Canadian lone wolf testing for everything on his own, going to be the Canadian captain. Why don't we see his first pick of the Vintage Masters draft? There you see the pack, and he took Yavimaya Elder. So that was his first pick. So for the first time, Randy Buehler, the question is, here's pick 2, so what now? Let's see the second pack. Away you go.
All right, Yavimaya Elder, I like green, there's a Findhorn Elves, there's a Krosan Tusker, there's a Guy's Embrace, which is really nice if you're in the Auras deck, but he already passed a Sultari Trooper, so I don't love green-white here. I think that with a Yavimaya Elder first pick, he clearly likes value, he clearly likes ramp. I mean, the Elves is a nice acceleration card. Clicksilvers is great if you're going to go into Goblins, but I think the Krosan Tusker might actually be the way he wants to go. I mean, Solar Blast is also reasonable, but if I'm starting with the Yavimaya Elder, I'm trying to build a green ramp deck in this format, I think it's either the Elves or the Tusker, and I don't know, I'm actually going to go Findhorn Elves.
So you would go with Findhorn Elves. All right, so people at home now are getting the chance to have a look at that pack, get a sense of what they want to do. Yeah, this doesn't look as straightforward as it might be. I mean, there's so many. The trouble, of course, with Vintage Masters, there's so many great cards there. Nate, what are people starting to think about?
It's actually pretty overwhelming to go along with the Findhorn Elves as the pick.
All right, so why don't we see what did Sean McLaren actually do with his second pick? There you see it down the bottom. He went with Solar Blast. Is that a surprise to you, Randy?
I was surprised, honestly, by the Yavimaya Elder first pick, and so I wasn't sure what he was thinking. I think that's the kind of pick you clearly have expectations about what you think going into the format. So, Solar Blast is an excellent card here. I'm not surprised that he would like Solar Blast the best out of this pack, I guess. All
right, so why don't we go back to our table? That was the first player round. So now we go to player number 2, and there you see it. It's Li Shichan of Hong Kong. Now, he did not have a great day yesterday. Went 1-6 in the end. But why don't we take a look at his first pick? And this is going to be very interesting.
Oh,
because,
yeah, Battle Screech is easy.
Right, so he takes a Battle Screech, but one of the things that came out...
Nightmare.
Yeah, one of the things that came out of this was that actually a lot of players were fighting for white, and the Battle Screech players didn't necessarily fare well. Nonetheless, Li Shichan opens Battle Screech. So if you at home have got pick 1, Battle Screech, let's look at pick 2. And the question is, Randy, so what now?
I've got Battle Screech. I want to be playing White Weenie if I can. I want to have a lot of white creatures so that I can play that on turn 4, so that I can activate the flashback cost immediately. I think Sultari Trooper is the obvious card to go there. I mean, in terms of the other white cards, I'm not opposed to having an Exile in my deck. Brilliant Halo can be decent in those decks. I think this one is pretty straightforward. There's not a good reason to play another color here. There aren't powerful cards pulling me into other colors. I think by far the best card in this pack is actually the Sultari Trooper, and it's in exactly the color that I took for my first pick. So I snap Sultari Trooper and don't even think twice about it.
Okay, so he's not going to think twice. I'm not even sure that's in Vintage Masters. But Nate, why don't we see what are people at home saying?
We were actually at 100% of the people voting for Soltari Trooper until a couple of people snuck in with Exile at the very end. But,
do you think that was a misclick? Or?
They were right next to each other in the polls.
Well. Okay, so pretty overwhelming Soltari Trooper. Let's see what Li Shi-chan did. He does indeed go Soltari Trooper. All right, so a fairly easy one, Randy said, for that one. Let's see if we can make things a little more difficult as we head down to the far right. And we've got Paula Vita Dama de Rosa, Brazil's finest, 9 Pro Tour top 8s to his name. In the middle of the pack right now, struggling a little bit, but let's see what he opened and what he went with. Well, he ended up going for Grizzly Fate. So there you see it, top middle. You can see the rest of the pack there. He went with Grizzly Fate. With that already in the bank, he then got to see this lot for pick number 2. Randy, once again, so what now?
Grizzly Fate, obviously he's in green. He would like to play that card. Basking Rootwalla is an excellent card in green. It's not the most exciting card in the color, but I mean, he's a solid guy. Rootwalla is just a solid guy. The most exciting card in this pack, though, is his Recurring Nightmare. I mean, Recurring Nightmare is incredibly powerful. I mean, on the one hand, it's nice as a reanimation spell, right? It's as good as a Reanimate or anything along those lines. But it's a recurring nightmare. It doesn't just bring one fatty out of the graveyard. It can potentially bring a never-ending stream. If you know you have a recurring nightmare in your pile, you can go out of your way to draft creatures with comes into play abilities. You can be sacrificing your creatures, bringing them back, sacrificing. You can set up all kinds of crazy chains. I mean, the dream would obviously be get a survival of the fittest at some point in the draft. So yeah, I would not stick to my color. I think Recurring Nightmare is powerful enough that I'm going outside of my color. I'm hoping the Rootwalla doesn't put somebody else into green, but yeah, I want this Recurring Nightmare. I want to see what craziness I can put together with that in my pile.
Is Recurring Nightmare something that you can easily set aside, or is it something that is going to warp your draft pretty utterly and you're saying, this is who I am this time?
I mean, you can set it aside. I'm not sure why you would want to. Like, it is a bomb quality card, and it's a single black. Like, doesn't actually require all that much setup. If you just have a bunch of good guys in your deck, throw it in. As long as, I mean, you might abandon the color completely, maybe, but I mean, you could even splash black for just Recur. It's that good.
All right, now, Nate, Randy's very convincing about this Recurring Nightmare, but is that reflected in the polls?
So it was actually fairly even for most of it, and then right about when Randy started talking about Recurring Nightmare, it started to swing tremendously in that direction. I do like the fact that we had exactly one player vote for Kravikan Sorcerer, and I'm pretty sure it was Christian Calcano, actually. So, yeah, nice. Recurring Nightmare is a runaway.
All right, so Recurring Nightmare, let's see what he did in fact pick. He did. That's where he goes, single black, and all kinds of fun stuff to do with that for the 9-time top 8 man from Brazil. All right, let's get back to our table, and we're now coming up to seat number 4. It's the reigning world champion, Shahar Shenhar of Israel. Why don't we take a look at his first look at Vintage Masters, and there you see down there, he has gone with the Crater Hellion. So a nice big powerful red card to open us up. So he then passes that to his left. In comes this selection from his right. Here's pick 2. Dear Lord, there's a lot of red on that screen.
Wow.
Randy, this perhaps looks a bit complicated. So what now?
Wow, all right. So I have a Crater Hellion, and if you look at what he passed the Soltari Trooper. I'm a big fan of the Trooper. I think it's one of the better commons, and white's the best color. So, but I don't want to take Trooper because it dies to my Crater Hellion, and I just passed a Trooper. So that's not a great option. These goblins are nice. Like there's a lot of red, you're right. Goblin Patrol is a solid 1-drop. Matron can go get whatever my best goblins are. Those are nice red cards, but again, they still die to this Crater Hellion guy that I've got. Like Crater Hellion wants to be in sort of a little bit of a slower red deck. Ideally, you would want to be in, the cycling version of the red deck. You get Lightning Rift, you get Astral Slide, you can slide out the Crater Hellion, bring him back again and again and again. That's kind of the dream with the Crater Hellion. So I don't want to draft the red creatures are going to die to that. I don't want Fire Blast because I'm not that aggressive. I think I want Solar Blast. I think Solar Blast, it's a good solid card. You can kill a creature, you can cycle to kill a 1-toughness creature and get value. And if you do manage to position yourself into the cycling deck with a Lightning Rift, Astral Slide, Dream, then you're going to be even happier that you've got the Solar Blast. It's yeah, I mean, there's a lot of directions you could go for in this pack, depending on what your intuitions are about the format, but I think I would go Solar Blast.
I'm very concerned with the lack of reverence you showed when you said the word Fire Blast. Ladies and gentlemen, Fire Blast. It's just crazy good.
No, it's
but
good.
Not here.
It's good if you were aggressive. Like, if he had first picked Goblin War Chief or Goblin Lackey or something along those lines, absolutely, go with the Fire Blast. If he'd first picked a Chain Lightning, you could go with the Fire Blast. But that Crater Hellion, it costs 6 mana. If you sacrifice 2 mountains before you get there, you're never playing your awesome Crater Hellion. So Fire Blast might actually be the second best card out of this pack for even with the Crater Hellion, but I think I like Solar Blast better given where we started.
Nate Price, do the chat players like Solar Blast more than Fire Blast?
By about a 100% margin, yeah. This is actually probably one of the closer battles that we've had, though. Like we put about 5 or 6 options up for each of these packs, and every single option that we gave people got at least 1 vote.
Oh, okay. What else did people go for?
So Solar Blast is definitely the #1 with about twice as many votes as Fire Blast got, coming in at #2. Matron was #3 in Forgotten Cave. People were definitely looking to stay on color, looking to do it in one of a number of different ways. But yeah, Solar Blast ends up taking it on sheer versatility, I guess.
All right, let's see what Shahar Shenhar went with. He went with Solar Blast as well. No sacrificing mountains for him, apparently. Not on pick 2 anyway. Boo. All right, let's move on round the table. It's our 2-time Player of the Year from Japan, Yuya Watanabe. Let's take a look at his first pick in Vintage Masters. So there you see it. Now, this was, of course, the draft. For those of you paying attention and not on work yesterday morning, that was his very first pick. It was a real-life Armadillo Cloak. What a beautiful card that is. But that meant kind of an interesting draft for you. So why don't we take a look at his second pick? And Randy, so what now?
All right, I've got Armadillo Cloak. I clearly want to be in the green-white Auras deck. I mean, there is an archetype that Armadillo Cloak slots into perfectly. So even when I open the pack, I'm hoping to see White Weenies. I'm hoping to see, Dream Pod Druid would be the dream as an uncommon. So my eye's drawn to the Saltari Trooper pretty quickly because that's the perfect guy to put an Armadillo Cloak onto. My eye is also drawn to this Elephant Guide, which would give me a second enchantment in that deck. Between the Guide and the Trooper, I think that there's enough enchantments that you're not hurting for those. I think what you really want is something to put the Armadillo Cloak onto. I think a 2-drop, which curves perfectly into the 3-mana Armadillo Cloak. I think a shadow creature so that it's hard to block your Armadillo Cloaked guy. Yuya's draft does go off the rails a little, but I do remember it from yesterday. I'm pretty sure I'd be on the Trooper even blind. But this pack, it looks like green-white auras is perfectly reasonable. I think the Trooper follows up the Armadillo Cloak just fine.
If you are drafting green-white auras, is it mostly a deck where you draft the creatures and then stick whatever you want on it, just whatever you happen to get? Or is it a deck where you draft the stuff that goes on creatures and then you stick it on whatever you happen to have?
I think that it's a little bit of both. You definitely want to go out of your way to get good evasive creatures that put your auras onto. You also want to get phantoms to put the auras onto because the phantom mechanic where you remove a +1/+1 counter to prevent all the damage. If you've got an Elephant Guide on a Phantom Nomad, sure, it takes damage and shrinks, it takes damage and shrinks, but now it's a 0/0 creature with +3/+3 from the Elephant Guide. There aren't any more counters to take off of it, but it's still a 3/3. It basically can no longer, it just doesn't take damage. It's effectively immortal. So there's a whole bunch of synergies like that. Getting provoke creatures is nice to put your enchantments onto, but you also got to get the good enchantments. And Elephant Guide is a good one, but we've already got one, and Trooper is kind of the best common creature to suit up.
Okay, Nate, anyone gone for Elephant Guide?
I did, but I only had a few people who decided to join me. This seemed like a pretty much a smash run, home run victory for Saltari Trooper.
All right,
everybody's on board.
Let's just confirm that Yuya Watanabe does indeed go for the Saltari Trooper Shadow for the win. Hopefully, in his case. Let's move on. Round the table, we're going to go to another Hall of Famer. It's William Jensen. He is up next. Why don't we take a look at his first pick? And that shiny tick box.
Yeah, let's hang out here for a second.
Yeah,
this first pick is awesome and insane all at the same time, right? Have you seen Vizara the Dreadful? 5/5 flying, tap to destroy a creature. Absolutely insane. Maybe a little clunky for this format at 6 mana. There's also a Chain Lightning in this pack, which is an excellent, one of the best common removal spells. Goblin General, I mean, maybe you don't want Chain Lightning in a Goblin General. He's just like, I'm going for it. This table is a crazy good players. If I can get it, the Storm deck is going to be awesome. I'm in. So first pick, Brain Freeze.
Right. So we have Brain Freeze, but we're going to unfreeze our brain as we look at pick 2, and we ask Randy Buehler to say, so what now?
Right. What now is I got past black weenies, which are terrible. I mean, black is the worst color, so I'm not interested in those. I got past Lightning Rift, which is definitely the best sort of card in this pack objectively. Lightning Rift is the powerful engine card for the cycling deck. We talked about, Shahar would have loved to have gotten this pack second. So Lightning Rift is very good, but it doesn't go in the Storm deck at all. It has absolutely zero synergy with Brain Freeze. The card that lets me stick to this Brain Freeze plan, I mean, I could play Lonely Sandbar in that deck, but Gush is the card that I think has the best synergy with the Storm deck. Now, Temporal Fissure's not crazy. It's got that word Storm in it. I'm all in on Storm. Your first pick in Brain Freeze, passing Vizara, you're pretty committed to Storm, but this Fissure's probably coming back. Nobody else wants it. And you know what? If it doesn't come back, that's really important to know if somebody else takes this. So I kind of want to ship it as a test case and make sure it comes back to me 10th. What I want is Gush. Gush will let me draw 2 cards, and it's free. I'm never paying 5 mana for this, and I mean, unless something goes wrong. I'm returning 2 islands to my hand. I'm drawing 2 cards. So I'm generating Storm count. I'm drawing cards such that I can play more things. I think Gush is the pick here.
I really love what you said there about the Fissure, because a lot of players would get as far as, no one else really wants this, I will get it back. But the idea that you kind of set yourself a red alert tripwire across the front door as you leave for the corner store, and you pop back 5 minutes later and the door's like slightly ajar, the little trail of the hair's missing, that's fantastic. Definitely. That is not something I had thought of at all. So you go with Gush. Nate, what does everyone at home go with?
This is another one that actually got a little vote for everything. Gush was definitely the crowd favorite. What surprises me is that Temporal Fissure was actually second over Dark Ritual.
Wow.
Yeah, considering how important that card is a lot of times to watching the Storm deck go off.
Okay, let's see what Billy Jensen goes with. Pick 2, he goes with the Gush, and as we know, he will get Temporal Fissure 10th and go. No one else.
It does come back, and then he's like, "Thank goodness Yuya is not Storm also."
Right, because he wasn't sure, was he?
No, Yuya was the guy he was most afraid of. He knew that Owen's actually on his left. That's who we'll see next. And then we watched Huey talk through this draft. He knew that Owen liked Storm, but there's no way Owen can go Storm with Huey passing to him. So Yuya was the guy he was worried about. But yeah, the little hair was still there. Nobody had broken in.
All right, so let's move on. Round the table we go. We go to number 7, and this is Owen Curtain of the United States. Why don't we take a look at his first pick? And here we are. The second player, Li Shichan, as well did this. Battle Screech number 1. Is there any objection, Randy, to this?
No, I would take Battle Screech here, but it's important to know that you passed an Armadillo Cloak and you passed a Grizzly Fate. Just keep, because the green-white is usually the best pairing with white, except here it's super risky.
Right, okay, so Battle Screech, he opens up. Here's his pick 2. Off we go, Randy. What now? Yeah,
well, here's the Vizara that Huey didn't draft. And I'm sure Owen looked and was like, oh, wow, Vizara, that's gigantic. Maybe a little clunky. The format's kind of slow. The black-white is not awesome. So Vizara, I'm sure, is tempting. I'm sure he thought about it. But it's like, sort of, is there a reason not to take the Vizara? And I look at this Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is great removal, and white-red is a pretty solid combination, right? If you're base white, he wants to be heavy white because Battle Screech is both a double white spell and means you want to have more white creatures, but splashing red for, a couple of Chain Lightnings, maybe a Falter, is pretty good strategy. I mean, the Bodyguard can be useful in white decks, but it's not nearly as good as these cards. The Halo can be useful. There's a couple of Goblins cards. Yeah, for me, it would be Chain Lightning versus Vizara. And I mean, while Vizara's power is impressive, I think having started with that Battle Screech, I would go Chain Lightning.
Interesting. Nate, do people agree with Randy?
Actually, yes, people do agree with Randy. It is another.
I'm very convincing.
The top 2 choices were Chain Lightning by, again, a large margin. Most of these have been very, very big runaways. Vizara was definitely the second pick.
Okay, what was the third pick?
Third pick is Afterlife.
Okay, so for those of you at home currently with a glass in your hand, put it down, and now let's look at Owen's pick. Benevolent Bodyguard.
Wow. Really?
Apparently.
That's awesome.
There we go.
No, it is the best white weenie creature in this pack.
So there you go. Yep, thanks for trying with the Chain Lightning.
Crazy.
Lots of people agreed, but Benevolent Bodyguard, that was the sleeper pick apparently in this one. We did ask, so what now? Maybe we should have asked, so what? But anyway, so we go round and we go to number 8, and we go to Willie Adel of Brazil to finish us off. So let's take a look at his first pick. He went, Randy, you've already talked about how important these cards can be. Phantom Nomad.
First pick, Phantom Nomad?
Apparently.
Look at the Goblin cards he could have had. I guess Quick Slither is a very first pickable card out of this pack for me. But if you take Quick Slither, you're passing so many goblins that you're going to have to fight for it. So
right.
He clearly doesn't want one of these green cards, which are also awesome. He clearly wants to be white.
Yeah,
all right, fair enough.
I guess quite a lot of players in the field had decided to limit themselves to certain archetypes, maybe, within Vintage Masters that they would like to go. Yeah, certainly, we heard many people who said, I want to be Storm, I want to be Goblins, I want to be Green-White, I want to be Battle Screech.
And I think there was a clear consensus that white was the best color.
Yeah, which, of course, led to some of the train wrecks.
Yeah, well, we saw there were 2 Battle Screeches got opened we've seen so far, and Willie's going in for Phantom Nomad.
Well,
all right.
So we have Phantom Nomad, because that's what we open.
Yep.
So let's go to pick 2. And for the final time at this particular event, we ask Randy Buehler, so what now? All
right, I've got Phantom Nomad. Apparently, Benevolent Bodyguard can be second picked. I'm not taking it highly enough, I think, apparently. Goblin, so I've got a Phantom Nomad. Yeah, I'm mostly looking for cards to talk about other than this Armadillo Cloak. I mean, Phantom Nomad, he clearly likes white. Phantom Nomad, the synergy with the Enchantment Aura strategy and Phantom Nomad is awesome. So, I mean, if you think Phantom Nomad is worth first picking, which I'm a little iffy on, I've got to think you go Armadillo Cloak to pair it with. I mean, Grizzly Fate is very powerful. This is a great card. But Armadillo Cloak is also a great card, and Armadillo Cloak has more synergy with the Phantom Nomad in particular. All right. I gotta think this is, I mean, we could have an interesting conversation about the first pick, but given the first pick, I gotta think Armadillo Cloak is what now?
Nate, do we agree?
This might have well have been a one-card combo, a one-card poll. Everyone voted for Armadillo Cloak, and that's pretty much the end of the story.
Except it isn't. Let's reveal.
Wow.
Grizzly Fate for Willie Adel.
He's even going into white-green, right?
Apparently,
I mean, it's not like he's in the color combination. He just thinks Grizzly Fate is a better card than Armadillo Cloak. I mean, it's very good. It's very, 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 very good. It's a little slower. But if you get the game, I guess he's a man that likes his attrition, his green-based attrition decks, so Grizzly Fate suits him pretty nicely.
Brandy, how much fun is Vintage Masters?
Oh, it's awesome. I think this is perhaps my favorite draft format ever. Like, I've done closing in on 100 drafts on Magic Online just for fun, just because I really enjoy the synergies and the way the format plays out, and just getting to play with these old, awesome, powerful cards. Just a great format.
So it turns out that the answer to So What Now is going to a Vintage Masters draft online. Thanks to all of you for being part of So What Now. And on the other side of lunch, we're going to be back to the action here at the World Championship.